Hello, story seekers. I'm Nico.
I'm Ben, and you're listening to The Tiny Bookcase.
Our guest for this showcase episode is a London-based best-selling novelist and acclaimed journalist who has written for The Observer, Vanity Fair, and The New Yorker. His fiction has been shortlisted for all sorts of prizes, including the Ian Fleming Steel Dagger Award and the Booker Prize.
His Killing Eve novels, which were the basis for the worldwide hit TV series, follow the thrilling, obsessive duel between Villanelle, an elite assassin, and Eve Polastri, the MI6 agent tasked with hunting her down.
We would like to welcome Luke Jennings.
Hello, Luke.
Hello. Hello, Ben.
Yes, it's lovely to be speaking with you. I have to say, I am in awe of your achievements, and hopefully we can get on to talking about some of those later on. But I was wondering, just as a bit of an icebreaker question, I noticed from looking you up that you have worked as a dance critic in the past, and
That's
that must have,
correct. Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
that sounds like it must have been absolutely fascinating. I've never done anything close to like that, and I'm just wondering what drew you to dance in the first place.
Well, when I was a teenager, I trained as a dancer and worked for until I was 30 as a classical ballet dancer
Oh,
and
wow.
doing other bits and pieces in films and TV. So, I knew what I was talking about. I trained at the Rambert School in London, and that was my first life, if you like, before I started writing. And I did that until I was 30. So when much later I was working as a journalist, it seemed a natural progression to work as a dance critic alongside the other reporting that I was doing.
So is ballet your favourite style of dance, would you say, or do you have another that's
No, not
a sort
really.
of secret love?
No, not really. I did. I mean, I love ballet, and that was my own background. But all forms of dance and contemporary dance, and as a critic, I saw all of it, every kind.
That must have been absolutely fascinating. I love the fact that it was. You mentioned it was your first life. I always like it when people talk in those kind of ways. That the idea that we get more than one, and to have been professional in many ways across the course of various careers is just really, really cool. It must have been quite a big deal to be working for quite acclaimed outlets as well. Like we mentioned, The Observer and Vanity Fair and The New Yorker. Do you think that's sort of where you honed your wordsmithing to be able to then write fiction later on, or were you already writing fiction at that point?
Well, I was writing fiction alongside journalism from the start,
Mm-hmm.
but journalism is a very good apprenticeship for the business of being a writer because it's tough. It has deadlines. There's no messing around. There's no there's no getting out of the work that you have to do.
Yeah.
And so I think it's very good to have to work for other people who are tough editors and work to the specifications of people other than yourself. So when you do come to work on your own account, you have that discipline of deadlines built in.
I know that journalistic editors are sort of famously hardcore. So that sounds like it tracks. Was there ever a moment where you were like, absolutely, just fuck this. This is too. this is awful to be edited like this, or was it just you just surged on ahead and took it in your stride?
Well, to be honest, I think bitterly though I resisted it at the time. Maybe my editors were always right. Less was always more. My beautifully turned phrase actually brought nothing to the party. They were right to cut it. And yeah, you do say, fuck this, what are you doing to my masterpiece? But actually, in the end, of course, they're right. And I think it's, as I said, it is very good for you as a writer to have
Absolutely.
somebody cutting you brutally right from the start and working to a word count and working to a deadline.
Yeah.
I find that you can often tell the fiction writers who have been journalists by their don't they don't sit around describing the sunset. They move things forward.
Mm.
Was it a tough transition to go from the sort of column inch where it's writing up to a maximum to writing full novels where it's sort of going up rather than keeping it down?
Yeah, writing fiction can be daunting if you're not ready for the kind of marathon nature of it. You have to pace yourself. And I've done quite a few novels now, and I know what that feels like, and I know what you should be feeling at whichever stage of the race, if you like. So I'm not unnerved by that. But the first time you do it, it can be an awful lot of work ahead of you, and also there's nobody telling you to do it, so you have to drive yourself quite hard. But I found that alternating journalism and fiction worked very well, because the things that drove me mad about one, I would stagger to the end of it, and then I would do the other, and then I'd find myself hating that, and back you go. And so the day wore on. But I think doing both was great, because you get out. Journalism takes you out of the house. It sends you all over the place. You get to listen to people you'd never talk to normally. You get to listen to wild points of view. You travel. I went all over the place. I went Moscow, St. Petersburg, United States. So journalism's great for that, and it gives you a lot of the material that when you're then sitting at home writing your fiction, you can pick through your memory of all of that, and it's there for you. So I think the two things are incredibly compatible for that reason. Journalism kicks you out of the house and makes you listen to new points of view. Fiction ties you to your desk, makes you have to be super disciplined, but drive yourself and look inside your own head.
I think that already sounds like an incredible point of view, and really insightful. But I think we'll probably get onto that in a bit. But for the moment, I know we've been talking about fiction, and this is a showcase episode. So I was wondering, Luke, if I know that you've prepared an extract to read for us, but would you like to put a bit of context on it first, or just launch straight in and people can catch up?
Well, this is I'm going to read a passage from the beginning of Codename Villanelle. That was the first of the Killing Eve novels. And we are meeting Oksana, who is to become Villanelle, when she is in a remand centre under arrest for triple murder of the men who killed her father. So she's in a hellish prison, and she's 23 at the time, and very little appears to lie ahead of her except life in a frozen, remote prison in the middle of Russia. So that's the context.
Fantastic.
And I will launch in to that, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
I'm
Please do.
excited to hear it.
Me too.
Okay. Conditions at the remand centre were unspeakable. Food was barely edible, sanitation non-existent, and an icy, numbing wind from the Dobryanka River penetrated every cheerless corner of the institution. The slightest infraction of the rules resulted in a prolonged period of shiza, or solitary confinement. Oksana had been there for 3 months when she was ordered from her cell, marched without explanation to the prison courtyard, and ordered to climb into a battered, all-terrain vehicle. 2 hours later, deep in the Perm Krai, driver halted by a bridge over the frozen Trusovaya River, wordlessly directed her to a low, prefabricated unit, beside which a black four-wheel drive Mercedes was parked. Inside the unit, there was just enough room for a table, 2 chairs, and a paraffin heater. A man in a heavy grey coat was sitting on one of the chairs. To begin with, just looked at her. Took in the threadbare prison uniform, gaunt features, posture of sullen defiance. Oksana Borisovna Vorontsova, he said eventually, consulting a printed folder on the table. Age, 23 years and 4 months. Accused of triple homicide with multiple aggravating circumstances. She waited, staring out of the window at a small square of snowy forest. The man was ordinary enough looking, but she knew at a glance that this was not someone who could be manipulated. In a fortnight's time you will face trial, he continued, and you will be found guilty. There is no other conceivable outcome, and in theory you could be sentenced to death. At best, you will spend the next 20 years of your life in a penal colony, which will make Dobryanka look like a holiday resort. Her eyes remained blank. The man lit a cigarette, an imported brand, and offered her one. It would have bought her an extra helping of food for a week at the remand centre, but Oksana refused it, with a barely perceptible shake of the head. 3 men found dead, one with his throat slashed to the bone, 2 shot in the face. Not quite the behaviour expected of a final year linguistics student at Perm's top university. Unless perhaps she happened to be the daughter of a Spetsnaz close-quarter battle instructor. He drew on his cigarette. Quite a reputation he had, Senior Sergeant Boris Vorontsov. Didn't help him, though, when he fell out with the gangsters he was moonlighting for. A bullet in the back and left to die in the street like a dog. Hardly a fitting end for a decorated veteran of Grozny and Pervomaiskoye. Behind the table he took a flask and 2 cardboard cups. Poured slowly so that the scent of strong tea infused the cold air. Nudged one of the cups towards her. The Brothers Circle, one of the most violent and ruthless criminal organizations in Russia. He shook his head. What were you thinking exactly when you decided to execute 3 of their foot soldiers? She looked away, her expression disdainful. It's just as well the police found you before the brothers did. I wouldn't be talking to you now. Dropped his cigarette end on the floor and trod it out. But I have to admit it was an efficient piece of work. Your father taught you well. She glanced at him again, dark-haired, medium height, perhaps 40 years old. His gaze was level and his eyes were almost, but not quite, sympathetic. But you neglected the most important rule of all. You got caught. She took an exploratory sip of her tea, reached across the table, took one of the cigarettes and lit it. So who are you? Someone before whom you can speak freely, Oksana Borisovna. But first, please, confirm the truth of the following. He took a folded sheaf of papers from his coat pocket. Your mother, who was Ukrainian, died when you were 7 of thyroid cancer, almost certainly as a consequence of her exposure to radiation following the Chernobyl reactor disaster 12 years earlier. 3 months after your mother's death, your father was posted to Chechnya, at which point you were taken into the temporary care of the Sakharov orphanage in Perm. You spent 18 months at the orphanage, during which time the staff noted your exceptional academic skills. They also identified other traits, including habitual bedwetting and a near total inability to form relationships with other children. She exhaled the smoke, a long grey plume in the cold air, and touched the tip of her tongue to a ridge of scar tissue on her upper lip. Gesture, like the scar itself, was barely perceptible, but the man in the coat saw it, noted it. When you were 10, your father was seconded again, this time to Dagestan. You returned to the Sakharov orphanage, where, after 3 months, you were discovered setting fire to the dormitory block, and transferred to the psychiatric unit of Municipal Hospital No. 4 in Perm. Against the advice of your therapist, who had diagnosed you as suffering from a sociopathic personality disorder, you were returned home to your father. The following year, you commenced your studies at Industrialny District Secondary School. Here, once again, you won praise for your academic results, particularly for your language skills, and once again it was noted that you made no attempt to make friends or form relationships. Indeed, it's on the record that you were involved in and suspected of instigating a number of violent incidents. You did, however, form an attachment to your French teacher, Miss Leonova, and became extremely agitated when you learned that she had been subjected to a serious sexual assault while waiting for a bus late at night. Her supposed assailant was arrested, but later released for lack of evidence. 6 weeks later, he was discovered in woodland near the Mulyanka River, incoherent with shock and blood loss. He had been castrated with a knife. Doctors succeeded in saving his life, but his attacker was never identified. At the time of these events, you were approaching your 17th birthday. She trod out her cigarette on the floor. Is this leading anywhere? He almost smiled. I could mention the gold medal you won for pistol shooting at the University Games in Ekaterinburg in your first year as an undergraduate. He shrugged. He leaned forward in his chair. Just between ourselves, those 3 men in the Pony Club, what did you feel when you killed them? She met his gaze, her expression blank. Okay. Pathetically, what might you have felt? At the time, I might have felt satisfaction at a job well done. Now, she shrugged again, nothing. So for nothing, you were looking at 20 years in Berezhniki or somewhere similar. You brought me all the way here to tell me that. The truth, Oksana Borisovna, is that the world has a problem with people like you. Men or women who are born as you were without a conscience or the ability to feel guilt. You represent a tiny fraction of the population at large, but without you, he lit another cigarette and sat back in his chair. Without predators, people who can think the unthinkable and act without fear or hesitation, the world stands still. You are an evolutionary necessity. There was a long silence. His words confirmed what she had always known, even at her lowest ebb, that she was different, she was special, she was born to soar. She stared through the window at the waiting vehicle, and the guards stamping their feet in the snow. Again, the tip of her tongue momentarily probed her upper lip. So what do you want from me? She asked. Constantine told her, sparing no detail of what was to come. And listening to him, it was as if everything in her life had led to that moment. Her expression never flickered, but the thrill that ripped through her was as avid as hunger.
Wow.
Absolutely dripping with atmosphere, that.
Yeah. Whoa. Yeah, really dripping with atmosphere is correct. I started writing down little quotes about how you were building place and setting and theme, and then I stopped because there were too many.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yes, I did a lot. I think just the way that it opens with this kind of like cheerless institution, I think was one of the lines about there's no, every cheerless corner of this institution, and you get this really quite brief but very, very particular and very good description of this remand center, and then it says then you have 3 months. She's been there for 3 months, and that hits like a punch to the gut because you think, oh my god, 3 months. I'd be a shivering wreck at the end of 3 months. But and then you get introduced to this character that's just still slick and cool and controlled and measured in her approach to things, not panicking, not freaking out, not getting angry. I love it. I really enjoyed the way that was constructed.
We definitely saw that journalistic practice come in immediately because the word economy at the beginning was so spot on. It got you could find 10 times the words you'd use in other novels trying to capture what you did, and it was straight in, immediate sense of place and the, like Ben says, the absolute awfulness of being there, but done so swiftly and elegantly. It was, it's always nice to know when you're watching something done well.
I think there's I think you have to use the writer today, the novelist today has to use absolutely everything to grab his or her reader's attention and hold it tight. I mean, there have never been more possible distractions, never been more reasons not to read, if you like. There have never been more alternatives to reading. So you can't, people are not going to sit and read your book all evening or all night unless you really make it worth their while, unless you really grab them hard.
I like the idea of using every tool at your disposal. I noticed at least one triple alliteration. I think it was small square of snowy forest. And I'm always a big fan of that kind of device. And also it is a framing shot, isn't it? It's quite literally just a snapshot of what's outside. Things like that were throughout it. I also think things like including little details like the fact that the heater isn't just a heater, it's a paraffin heater. And that's a particular light, that kind of rosy orange that the metal on a paraffin heater grows. Like, we know that room is filled with that, the smell of that, the light of that, the color of that.
Yes, we definitely know the smell of that sort of, that kind of oily smell.
Yeah.
I think you were talking about setting the scene. I think film is inside all of us now. I think as writers, we give the establishing shot, and then we zoom in close and look for the telling detail and the two shot and all the rest of it. Obviously, in fiction, you're not trying to compete with film, with cinema, but I think what you can do is you can borrow its tricks and use them. They will be familiar to readers. Readers will be familiar with that process of being taken from the wide shot to the narrow angle shot.
I think it's a very sensible thing to do. It's we talk about this quite a lot with authors about writing in a sort of what people now say is a cinematic way, but I do wonder how we would have described that if you were writing in that sort of very tight framework, or if it was possible to write with that sort of framework before we were making movies the way we do now.
I think it probably all intertwines a bit. I thought. But I guess the goal is to adopt it and sort of borrow and steal from it without sounding like you're writing stage directions. Because
yes, 100%.
Yeah.
I think the great advantage that we have in fiction over film is that we make our readers create their own images and their own worlds. And the more you lay down, the more detail you give them in a kind of Victorian novel kind of way, the less they generate for themselves. And it's the images that people generate for themselves that I think cling and hold much more tightly than the ones that are simply presented to you. I think there's only so many facts you can remember about a thing or a person, and those descriptions that sort of start with the color of the hair and then the color of the eyes and then the narrow nose or the sort of broad cheeks, or that's more information than we can absorb easily at one time, I think. So fewer facts, going deeper.
Am I right in thinking that the only bit of like very detailed physical description we get of her is the scar on her lip?
That's the only thing.
That's the only thing. Crikey. Yes. No, it really conjures the character with one detail. I know we get her description of him a couple of times, don't we? You know, not somebody who can be manipulated, medium height, that kind of thing. But it's all done in character. It's showing rather than telling, even though it is describing somebody, which I think is a narrow line to walk, but one that you've done really well.
Well, there's a thing that you try and do, which is to give people, in writing Oksana Villanelle, she's going to be somebody they're going to spend a lot of time with, so they have to really make their own Villanelle. And it can be tricky when you then get a TV or a film version which defines your character. So I think we were incredibly lucky with the TV series that I don't think anybody who had their own idea of Villanelle found Jodie Comer's version at odds with theirs.
Were you involved at all in the casting? Like, did you have any sort of say over it? I know I know authors often either have no say or quite a lot of say.
Well, I had sort of something in between.
Okay.
I was consulted, which they were good enough to do, and they didn't have to, but they did consult me, and they did ask me my opinion about about who should play the principal roles, and I was involved with that, but with Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who saw the people before I did, and she and I had very much the same idea certainly about Villanelle and Eve, and so she went out to the States to do the screen tests and sent them to me without comment, and we both agreed.
Without comment.
Yes,
Very
absolutely.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And we agreed that it had to be Jodie, and that we should dig our teeth in and dig our heels in and insist, as both of us, that's what we were, that we should make that our kind of absolute non-negotiable.
The
right choice. Yeah.
Is it strange to see something that was once your thoughts typed out spring to life on the screen?
It is. Phoebe and I had many months to talk about these characters before Killing Eve was commissioned as a TV series, and so we really had plenty of time to decide who these people were and what they were about and what they looked like and all of that. So we had a very good idea. We had a very good idea of what we wanted, because it takes time for a production company to actually get a broadcaster who's prepared to pay the great deal of money in making a TV series. So we had months to do this, and we refined what we wanted. So when it all happens very slowly, and then it happens very fast. So when actually it actually was something that was definitely happening, it all happened pretty fast. But by then we knew what we wanted, and as I said, the production company were kind enough to involve me in those decisions, which they didn't have to do, but they thought I could maybe, bring some insights to the whole thing. And also I got on very well with Phoebe, and so the two of us were a good team.
I have to say, I know she's come up a couple of times, but my impression of Phoebe Waller-Bridge is that she's just an incredible talent. Is that accurate to your working relationship with her?
Yes, I mean we only worked on the first series together. After that, she went off to do other things, and I wasn't involved in the subsequent series. So, but for the duration of that first series, yes, we had a blast. It was wonderful.
It's fantastic to hear. I always love hearing stories about how people got on and did well behind the scenes whilst they're, producing something or creating something together. You think about how the time that they had on the Lord of the Rings movies. The cast were there for 12 months or something together, and they all really bonded and had a good time with it. I like to think that everything should be made like that, rather than this sort of cookie cutter industrial engine that appears to be in play for a lot of things.
Definitely. I mean, I wasn't, once they started filming, I wasn't around much. Partly because I had subsequent books to write, but also partly because, nobody wants the writer on set, really. Everybody's charming to you and polite and lovely. And I was sort of, I got on well with the actors, but you have to know that you're there on sufferance, and that you should really, it's not your job, and everything slightly stops when you arrive.
Okay.
I mean, in the nicest possible way, but it does, and so you can't outstay your welcome. They've got work to do, and and the best thing you can do as the writer is to let them get on with it.
Still, just further to Nico's point and question earlier, that must have been an absolute dream to actually walk through sets of the rooms that you described when you were, writing them out years earlier. Just actually being in the room.
It was very strange.
Yeah.
It was very strange seeing Villanelle's Paris flat, which had been built in detailed perfection on this incredibly grim place somewhere off the M1. And it was very, very, very strange walking into your own imagination, if you see what I mean.
Absolutely.
It was very strange. They'd done Eve's flat and Villanelle's flat, and you could adapted, obviously, to be able to move cameras around and all of that. But it was really quite uncanny, as I said, stepping into your own imagination like that.
I just wanted to mention a couple of more things of my thoughts on that extract, because I know we've talked a lot about how the sort of the brevity and the wit of it, but I think there's whenever you're writing something about violent people, I think it's important that the world feels hard to like it could have generated those people, and that felt to me like that was being constructed on a global scale. You were listing sort of places as he was reading out her sort of life history, and it was Dagestan, Chechnya, the Chernobyl disaster. Her father's was a Spetsnaz close quarters battle instructor, and it's just like if they weren't, they could have actually just been a normal person potentially if they were born somewhere else. But all of these things together create this force of nature, of a person that is currently resisting being interrogated.
They create a Villanelle, Ben, is what they create.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's done very quickly. But the point that the sort of the moment where it really shocked me in that moment was when he mentions her bedwetting, and it does just about get like a, that imperceptible gesture of the sort of the feeling of the lip. Um, and I wondered whether you had toyed with other things that she could have that might seem vulnerable in that moment, and why did you settle on that one in particular?
Well, bedwetting is a trait which is a behavioural thing that young people do with antisocial personality disorders, but also it struck me as a particularly hellish thing to happen to a young person, 10, 12, frozen in her dirty sheets in an orphanage. The getting colder and sorer, and it just seemed to encapsulate the absolute misery of that kind of place. And
No, I think you're right.
you talk about Chernobyl and Chechnya and Dagestan and all these things. What I wanted her to be a child of that kind of post-Soviet moment where everything had been held in check by Sovietism, communism, and the entire culture was a ticking bomb, and then suddenly everything's up in the air, and Russian society is fractured in all sorts of different ways, in all sorts of different directions. Everything that had been covered up and held together with sticky tape under the communists is revealed as the kind of cracked and broken thing that it actually is. And that's the world in which she and her family find themselves.
I think it's just very well constructed. I know you mentioned that you travelled all over the world, including to Russia as a journalist, and it sounds like some of that probably did go in here as well. I love that description, by the way. The sort of the sticky tape over the cracks. This very quick way that she is galvanized, I would say, potentially is the right word there, and turned into a weapon by this guy, I think means that for me, this is the introduction to Villanelle, but it's actually her handler that gives me the sort of cold feeling in my belly, because they are so particular and careful about the way that they construct a narrative with this young woman and then tell her what she is, and it's what she wants to hear, so she goes with it.
It's a fascinating interplay, isn't it? Her
Yeah,
thinking he can't be manipulated before he
yeah,
then goes on to do that to her.
yes,
Lovely stuff.
Well, it's the weaponizing of her personality,
absolutely.
and that's what he knows exactly what to do. He knows exactly what button to press. He's been looking for people like this. This is what he does. He finds them, and then he weaponizes their fractured personalities.
Oh God, that's going to be sitting with me for a while. I feel like you've really taught me some stuff there. But I think for the moment, I was wondering if we might start asking you some interview questions and see where the conversation leads us.
Yeah, sure,
Uh,
absolutely.
wonderful. So, I don't think this has come up yet. So I thought I'd just start by asking, who inspired you to start telling your own stories?
Um, what actually happened was that shortly after I stopped dancing and started writing, I had stopped dancing partly because of an injury that happened to me. I slipped a disc on stage, in fact, at the
Oh
Royal
no.
Opera
crikey.
House, and which was dramatic. And for a long time, I had a bad back, and that returned at one point. I was literally laid up for 3 months, and I couldn't really move. I certainly couldn't stand up or go out. So there I was, in my flat, just married, and so I couldn't do any journalism. So I put my laptop on my chest and started tapping out a novel. And I'd done enough by the time I could walk again to kind of make it worth carrying on.
Crikey! So it was entirely just you needed something to distract your mind whilst you were in pain and recovering from a bad injury, having suffered that.
Well, I think I wanted to I was restless and bored and annoyed and in pain, and I wanted to get on with something, and so I just started tapping it out, really.
We've had people talk about teachers and parents, and I don't think we've ever had someone credit their start to their own slipped disc. So you are alone in that one. That's wicked to just
Yeah.
have the gumption in you.
It must have been. I feel like it's just so strong and resilient as a character trait to have something like that happen to you, literally on on the stage, and then to move forwards in another way. It's really impressive.
Well, it was
Yeah.
a very strange event. It was it was it. I was dancing with two other guys and three young women in an opera called Faust, and we were devils. And we had to come on at a certain point and take Faust and drag him down to hell. It was really good fun,
Mm.
and as we had to come on running down a ramp onto the Opera House stage, and as we ran down, each guy had to lift each woman up in the air, and this would have been fine on the flat stage. Running down a 45-degree ramp, there's probably you couldn't find a much better way to put somebody's back out. So literally, I ran on down the slope, lifted my partner in the air, and I knew immediately that was it. I wasn't going to be able to move. I just had to. I got her down on her feet, got behind a piece of scenery, and that was me. That was the end.
Well done for getting her down onto her feet.
Yeah.
Most people would have just just sort of screamed and clutched their back and dropped her.
Possibly two book series there, where one from yourself and one from a ballerina who's unceremoniously launched. But,
Yeah, well, it's very strange how your mind overrides pain in that kind of situation.
Yeah.
And for a limited amount of time, you can sort of do extraordinary things, and then you literally can't move. Well, that was my experience anyway.
Was it
very cool. Go ahead, Nick.
when you'd finished that first draft?
Yeah.
What was the? There has to be a moment where you think, yeah, I've written this. Were you writing it for yourself, or did you think, no, I'm going to write a book and then I'm going to get it published and I'm going to do that, or was it a sort of self-care reflex initially?
Well, it was I didn't plan it. I didn't didn't do what I would do now, which is to work out what's the beginning, what's the middle, and what's the end.
Yeah.
I didn't do anything like that. I just started on page one and kept typing until it seemed to be over. And I didn't particularly think about it being published. I thought that was a very long shot, but I did nevertheless send it to an agent who liked it and sent it to a publisher, and it did in fact get published. So I was extremely lucky. I had no idea when this happened that actually this is a rarer thing than it was a rarer thing than I realized at the time.
I know we get a lot of people on this podcast discussing how they might have very difficult journeys. Very talented people, but it just takes a while to break into the industry. So I know that it's definitely that's a somewhat a freak occurrence. But congratulations and well done.
I'm glad it happened.
Yeah, very much so. When I know obviously we've talked about dance already, but do you feel connected to a particular subculture in society? And if so, has it shaped your writing at all?
If it's, I think possibly if there's a subculture, I think all writers, I mean, this is something of a cliche, but I think novelists are, in a sense, once you're established, it all looks very meant. Actually, the whole thing is desperate and improvised and scrabbled together, and writers of fiction tend to be people who precisely the thing that makes them good at fiction, at seeing multiple possible situations and lives and outcomes, is the thing that in my case anyway probably made me pretty hopeless at planning any sort of structured career for myself. And I think this is true of a lot of novelists, that at any given moment, as I say, you can see all sorts of different outcomes. And career-wise, committing yourself to one harder than choosing fiction, which offers you, in a proxy kind of way, a million different directions, all of them under your control. So I think fiction writers are desperate men and women. This is the way that they fit in, but this is the way that they don't fit in. You're not part of anything as a fiction writer. There's not a kind of a community of fiction writers. There's a 10,000 atomized individuals at their desks, but it's not a community, and you're not really part of something. You are an outsider, almost by definition, I think. Even if you're part of a community of outsiders. I mean, I know other writers, and I have great friends who are writers. By and large, we're not particularly people who cluster together, and we regard each other warily. We're not a community.
Yeah. Does that sort of potential lifeline wanderlust, for lack of a better way of putting it, still sit with you, or do you think you found a pocket you're happy in?
Well, I'm continuing to write the Killing Eve novels, and each one takes me to a new place, a new set of experiences, research-wise, travel-wise. The last the last novel, Killing Eve Longshot, was set in the world of horse racing, and I know something about that from my childhood, from growing up in the country, but rediscovering that world was wonderful. And then the book that followed that is set in the Aegean, in the Greek islands. And so everyone is a world. Everyone is a world to be searched and discovered and reinterpreted and reimagined. So without leaving your desk, I mean, I do actually go to places and talk to people, because I always enjoyed that side. I always enjoyed research. As a journalist, I love meeting new people, and the weirder the better. So I'm still doing that. Yeah.
You must be thrilled by us. If the weirder the better is the case.
I think I have a little follow-up question to that, which is just I'm fascinated by this idea of going out and traveling for research, and I wonder whether you see that as almost sowing the seeds to be reaped sort of later on down the line, or whether you're, whilst you're in the Aegean speaking with people in order to do the research for the book, whether you're already, working on it. Are you already like jotting down whilst you're on holiday, for want of a better word, when you're holiday's not really the right word, is it? It sounds like you go and experience the places quite deliberately in order to be able to channel them into your work. So I think somewhere in there was a question, which was probably something along the lines of, do you spend quite a long time in places like that, or do you go for sort of a brief time and then come back and write?
It's very rarely a question of talking to people. I mean, the Aegean and Mediterranean research was much more just making notes about light at different times of day and what it's like to approach a small island at 5 o'clock in the morning. the way that the sun comes up, and the way that the land separates itself from the sea, those kind of things, because people are easier, but sense of place, if you haven't got the sense of place, and if you can't take people there, then the whole thing's a non-starter. So for me, place is what I look for first. And what does it smell like on a race course when horses are exercising at 6:30 in the morning? What does an island look like as the sun goes down in Greece? Those kind of things, because it's to do with rooting the characters' actions and thoughts in the physical, in the things that are around them. And if you're going to be believable, I mean, you talked about showing, not telling. Your characters have to. The most powerful way in which they interact with their worlds is physically. What are they feeling at any given time? What's the ground like underfoot? What's the temperature? What can they see? What can they hear? What can they smell? So it's those things. It's not kind of talking to people and finding out facts. Those are easy. I mean, we have AI, we have the internet. You can find out facts easily.
Sense of place. I think that definitely came across in the section that you read for us, because there was the sense of when he pours the tea and it's the strong smell of tea. It struck me that it actually, when the weather is cold, smells and sounds do seem to be stronger somehow, like more concentrated. So I really got quite a physical reaction to the smell of that black tea when it was poured in the extract, because we know that it was a cold environment, and you wouldn't necessarily have that without knowing what it's like in a Siberian forest and things like that.
Well, when you're in Russia in the winter, in deep snow, the brutality of the place and the kind of resilience that you have to live your life successfully in those conditions. They strike you incredibly forcefully. I mean, we have all sorts of safety nets in this country, but you're struck in Russia in midwinter by the fact that people just die. The place kills them. Moscow is full of people freezing to death in the winter.
It's harrowing.
It's not full of them, but I mean, you go away from the center and you go to poor places, and it is really brutal.
Oh, yeah.
That's,
Well,
that's pretty on edge.
no, you conjured it even then. So we've talked a lot about writing fiction, but when you're reading fiction, do you have particular themes that you look for that you find appealing? You know, if you look at a blurb on the back of a book and you're like, oh, this has that, are you more likely to read it?
Well, I do like spy stuff.
Mm.
And certainly anything that smacks of writers like Le Carre and William Boyd and all of those great spy writers. There's something about secrecy and deceit, the secret world. I mean, it is fascinating to people whose own trade is fiction. I mean,
Yeah.
I've always been interested in espionage. I mean, possibly, I think, because I would have been the world's worst spy. um, I'm terrible at deceiving people, and secrets are to be shared, as far as I'm concerned. So,
I totally agree. I don't know if you've ever played any of those sort of parlor games where the idea is to hide from people what you know. It's sort of like a hidden information game. But I absolutely suck at those games. I'm always accidentally giving away what I know and what I think other people know. I don't know whether that probably speaks volumes about me rather than you, I think. I just when you mentioned Le Carre, then I was wondering. I just had a memory. I remember I read some Len Deighton when I was a teenager.
oh
Do,
yeah,
do
yes,
you have a take on Len Deighton? Is that high in your estimation?
very high,
Yeah,
yes. And
yeah.
he wrote a wonderful novel called Bomber, about the Second World War, set around the crew of a Lancaster bomber on a mission over Germany, which is, I think, almost the best book about war ever written. It's a sensationally good book.
Oh, great recommendation. I think I read. I think it might have been Game, Set, and Match. I think it was a
Oh
trilogy.
yeah,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
Oh yeah, that was really good. My dad's really into spy fiction, so he's got a whole bookcase full of them. So I was just pilfering as a kid. It was lovely.
No, it's somewhat adjacent, really, but do you like a spy film as well, or is it just in the books?
I like the old spy films.
Yeah.
Spy Who Came In From the Cold. I mean, there are very few much good. They're simplistic, unsophisticated, unbelievable, really. I mean, I'm not honestly much interested in spooks type stuff,
Yeah.
but I do like the formality of the old. It, I love the Ipcress file and the Spy Who Came In From the Cold.
Is it Richard Burton in Spy Who Came from the Cold? I watched it
Yes,
many years ago, but yeah, I remember it being the bit where he's on the wall being just brutally sad. Um, I would guess that would Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy fit in that bracket for you as well?
yes, completely.
Yeah.
I love both the Alec Guinness TV
Mm.
series and the Gary Oldman film, which is absolutely beautifully made. I think the last great spy film. I haven't seen much that, which is not to say that that's exactly what espionage was like,
No,
but it somehow is a perfect encapsulation of the genre that that we enjoy.
yeah, it's the sort of fantasy version of it, isn't it? In a way.
Yes, completely. It's impossible to imagine that the real thing is anything like as wonderfully textured, nuanced, and peopled by such fascinating characters. That no chance that that's the case. Probably why the alternative world that Carey in particular gives us. There's a very good BBC series, The Perfect Spy, of course, which was Peter Egan, absolutely wonderful and worth digging out.
I'll take that note. Thank you. I'm currently I just finished a rewatch of the first season. I'm part way through the next season of this The Night Manager. You know, this BBC one with Tom Hiddleston and Hugh Laurie. And I do find that it does just sort of scratch an itch for me that other genres just don't. They can't find it for whatever reason. So I'm very much with you on that kind of thing.
Yes. I mean, there's the inherent contradiction in something like The Night Manager, in that this is a world in which low profile and discretion and invisibility are absolutely paramount, and yet the story is peopled with these radiantly fascinating characters who you would notice in a crowd of 1,000.
Absolutely, yeah, real bombastic characters. Hugh Laurie's character in that is almost like a marionette come to life, isn't he? He's terrifying, almost like a horror movie, I would say, whenever he's on screen.
Yes, no, wonderful. And another thing that I really enjoyed was The Little Drummer Girl.
Oh yes, I heard that was very good.
It was very good.
Yeah. Well, so our next question is Nico's favorite question, so I won't deny him the chance to to ask it. So if you're ready.
The thing is, look, I'm not going to ask a question. I'm going to dispense of this facade that Ben and I are putting up. The reason we're really here, Ben and I are being held hostage by a wizard. He's a powerful and capricious bibliomancer. These story sorcerers, and this one, he gets all of his power from people's love of books, and the only way that we can satisfy his demands is to give him book recommendations from talented writers such as yourself. So if you feel like sparing us from some torture, what novel is closest to your heart right now?
Gosh, that's really not easy.
It's not kind, is it? It's
no,
it's a
it's
particularly
not.
unkind question.
I will say though, the coals are looking particularly hot today, so if you don't mind giving us a hand.
Well, The Spy Who Came In From the Cold. Sorry to go back to Le Carre, but it's the perfection of its plot is pretty much unimprovable. It's bleak, sort of the bleakly exquisite structure of it, I think, makes it the best spy story ever written. So that's closest to my heart.
Is it the kind of book that you would take down off the shelf and just read a passage from it in order to get the sense of it again?
I like being taken back in time to the series of assumptions that people had about the world in the 1960s. I mean, it's just a tiny memory, but it's not dead, and books like that take me back there.
I mean, yeah, judging by the news in the last week, I think I'd like to go back to the '60s as well. Bloody hell, it's been
Yes.
it's been quite an intense time. Um, Conjuring the place based on people's assumptions is a really strong way to put that.
Yeah. Are you a book rereader? Do you revisit the books you love, or are you one and
Yes,
done?
I do. I do, and probably at the expense of other books that I should read, but I do very much kind of revisit slightly obsessively certain books.
All right, you will receive no judgment for that here.
Yeah, no, it's. I think the reason I asked that question about rereading passages because I have certain authors that I really love to try and remember what it felt like to read their writing. So I'm not necessarily rereading passages in order to copy style or anything like that. I'm not trying to do that, but I'm just trying to figure out how they created that feeling in me. So you were talking about that kind of that the bleak world and the assumptions of the world, and that really twigged for me when you said the assumptions that they have about the world, because I think that's typically how it's done, isn't it? That it doesn't really matter what the genre is. That's how the tone is built. It's how it's constructed.
I think it is. A person we haven't talked about is Ian Fleming,
Oh
who
yeah,
Yeah.
who I read and obsessively reread throughout my teens, and he was a much better writer than he's given credit for. And I'd say the first chapter of On Her Majesty's Secret Service, which is set in the evening on a beach in northern France, as the sun's going down, is one of the most superb pieces of scene setting it's that I've ever read. It was, and I think I learned a lot from reading and rereading Ian Fleming about concision, about cutting out everything except the thing that puts you in that place. The beginning, that opening line in Casino Royale, I can't remember exactly how it goes, but it's something like, the smell of a casino at 4 a.m. is nauseating. Just that he was a genius at throwing you into place and prickling all your senses in the way that place would do.
I actually haven't read much in Fleming, which is definitely a black spot on my record. But I remember when I was a kid, I think I was about 10 when I did this. I'd I'd been watching James Bond movies since I could walk, I think, um, and I decided I was going to read one, so I just picked one down off the shelf and I started reading it. And to this day, I don't quite know which one it was. So you might be able to tell me which one it was. But I had this image of Bond in my head, and I think James at the time was being played by Pierce Brosnan. So it's very much, it's we're deep in the camp era. It's he's running faster than bullets can hit him and things like that. And yeah, I pick up this book and I start reading it, and it's about how Bond is hiding from, I think it's the Russians, and he's hiding in the back of a car in a car park with a blanket thrown over himself in order to try and disguise that he's there, and he's absolutely terrified. Sort of, pissing his pants, terrified of being caught. And we're getting descriptions of flashlights coming in through frosted over windows and that kind of thing. And I put it down because I was A, scared, and B, I thought I'd picked up the wrong book. Like, it's just chalk and cheese to how the movies were. This kind of really brutal storytelling. So that seems to track for me. But I don't know if that's kind of memory of which book that might be for you. But
I'm not sure. Is it from Russia with Love?
It sounds like it might be from Russia with Love, mightn't it? I think I'll have to dig that one out and avenge my earlier self, I think.
Relive the fear.
Relive the
Let me
fear.
just read the first paragraph of Casino Royale.
Hell
I've
yeah,
just
let's go.
got it down off the shelf. The scent and smoke and sweat of a casino are nauseating at 3 a.m. And the soul erosion produced by high gambling, a compost of greed and fear and nervous tension, becomes unbearable, and the senses awake and revolt from it.
Oh,
It's pretty
shit.
good, isn't it?
It's really good.
It's not bad.
The idea of your senses revolting. Oh, yeah, that's poetry.
I can't have a conversation about Ian Fleming as well without remembering that he wrote Chitty Chitty Bang Bang,
Did
which
he
is
really?
so at odds. Yes, he did. I think it's just like cars that did things.
It's pretty cool. They are
Yeah.
cool.
I haven't read Chitty Chitty Bang Bang or indeed seen it, so it's a mystery to me.
It's not a lot like James Bond. Apart
I
from
think
the
he was a fairly cynical man who knew that he had a talent that he could exploit, and writing Chitty Chitty Bang Bang was very commercially acute piece of operating.
Definitely. I think I remember reading somewhere that Christopher Lee was one of the inspirations for his James Bond. Have you got a take on that? I think that's.
I did hear
Yeah.
that. I did hear that. I'm always fascinated by facts about Christopher Lee, and one of the most fascinating is that when he was a young man, he was present at the last public guillotining of a criminal in Paris.
Yeah, I have heard that one as well, and it's just astounding, isn't it, to think that obviously this extremely well-known actor lived through such a historic event, the last guillotining.
I mean, to say lived through makes it sound as if...
Yeah, true, yeah.
Makes it sound not proactive. He went there. It was at 6 a.m. or something. You wouldn't be there by accident.
No. Do you think there's something to that, in actively seeking out uncomfortable and potentially scarring, dangerous moments in order to be a creative? Do you think there's...
I don't know. I think he was drawn to go there, and something about him as an actor, as a performer, is you can tell that he's a sort of connoisseur of some fairly arcane experiences.
Well, I mean, on that, I think because I know that I think he did have a fairly big library of like I think he called them black magic books. So I did just want to ask the question for yourself when you're telling your stories. What role does religion have in your tale weaving?
Well, I don't know. I've honestly never really thought about that. I mean, my stories tend to feature fairly amoral characters, so possibly I'm compartmentalizing there, and if I have, I think possibly a sort of a love of the natural world and a determination to be faithful to the natural world and to the countryside and the world around us. Is that a religious sensibility?
I think so. That's definitely a a lot of people talk about finding God in the natural world. I think
it's a faith, isn't it? It's the thing you choose to put your belief into, whether or not it sort of ascends into a religious belief. I think that's otherwise to the point, if it's where you find your hope and your joy.
Yes, I agree. That's perfectly put. And I do try and reflect that in my writing. Better, for better or for worse. I mean, the absence of that is just as potent as the presence of it.
I think it's quite difficult to write the absence of it, isn't it? Have you ever written a character that is particularly religious, or has a particular doctrine or creed that they stick to?
No, no. I mean, I love Graham Greene, and I think it's brilliant the way that he does something actually which is very courageous in the world of fiction, which is give his characters religious belief, and to make that serious and complex and difficult. It was important to him, and he did it obviously brilliantly. But it's not. I don't think it's. I think possibly I'll sort of stick with the definition of belief in the natural world, and that's the natural world is where I find my reassurance, really.
So we have edited the natural world a great deal in our time as a roaming species, not always for the better. But what about your own work? What's your editing process?
I think it's just a question of taking out everything that doesn't contribute to what you want to establish. It's a bit like that game Jenga, where you have all the pile. Take out everything until the thing is just tottering, till it's, because as I said earlier, I mean, it's, if you can make people do the work for you, you just throw in the sketchiest of brushstrokes, and they create the characters and the places, then it's going to be much more real to them than if you just lay it all out in front of them. So if I find myself laying out too much information, rather than trying to nudge people into doing the work themselves, then I take the knife to it.
Clearly you're from the bit that we read earlier, but also from the rest of your work, this idea of it barely being there. You describe this Jenga tower that you take bits out of until it's just hanging on. It really made me think about writing in a way that you sort of making it as though it's just there enough for people to then spin out from. But then again, from as we saw earlier, it's such an incredible sense of place and tone and theme are still constructed. Is it a case of removing words still for you now when you're writing, like for example your most recent book? Do you actually write 300,000 words and then it gets cut down by you to 100?
No, not that
Yeah.
much, because I sort of edit as I go.
Mm.
But definitely, if in doubt, cut. And it just until I'm satisfied that the thing flows, because I think that if you're indulgent in that way, then all that happens is that extra word or phrase or whatever it is, it just snags the reader's consciousness, which means that they're brought back up to the surface, and they're not just ingesting your story, they're consciously processing it.
That make me really think about why I dislike 3D movies in the cinema. The way because When for example, if you're watching a horror movie and they throw an axe at the screen, it comes right at you, and you jump in your seat, and your hands go down, and you grip maybe the hand of the person next to you, whatever it might be. It reminds you that you're in a cinema.
Yeah.
It reminds you that you're not in the movie, not in the story. And I think it's delightful that that's true for creating meaning and story in
Yeah,
as well.
I mean, it's a kind of fourth wall thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It never really works.
I'm just thinking about, obviously, with your work on the series that then became a TV show, would you ever want to do that again? Like, if you were to write a new series, an entirely new series, would you always be up for that kind of thing, or would you prefer to keep it as a book? Do you think, just in this hypothetical?
Well, I think I always saw Killing Eve, or Villanelle, as it was called before it was called Killing Eve. I always saw it as a TV series right from day one. I wrote it as something that I hoped would be picked up for TV, which I don't usually do, but that it just seemed to me that it was very TV, and that's how I wrote it.
How much did that affect the words as they went down? Did you write anything and think, "Oh no, that would be far too expensive to shoot," or did you still let it come as it came?
No, well, I mean, I started writing it, and as I did so, I thought this actually would, this would really work on TV. But no, I wasn't. I mean, I wasn't kind of shaping it for TV, but I was conscious that it would make good TV.
I'd be sorely tempted if you had one or two out and they picked it up and they wanted you to keep writing, to start putting in things to see if they could manage it. Maybe I'm just a git. And of course, then 12 dragons came, each unique and clearly made by different artists.
Just on this, we've spoken a lot about Killing Eve, but I know that you have, and sorry, Villanelle, I know that you have written plenty of other things. Is there anywhere in particular that you think people should start reading your work? Like, is there a book that you'd sort of be like, oh, if you're going to read me, you should read that one first?
Well, I don't know really. I mean, I'm having a lot of fun at the moment with this, with the Killing Eve world, and I've written that there are now 5 novels out and one more coming out in the spring. So I've never before kind of developed a world and characters quite this much. So I guess I'd say people. This is where I am at the moment. Is seeing where these characters and this story goes. I mean, there are plenty of there are other books to read, but I think these are a good kicking off place, maybe.
Yeah. I was looking through your bibliography, and one of the things that stood out to me was that you have co-authored a book in the past as well. And I was wondering what that was like. So Nico and I have tried a couple of times to write stuff together, and it's not to say that it didn't work. Of course, it's just it is a very different set of skills. It feels
Quite hard, yeah.
yeah. And I was wondering how you found that.
Well, it was actually very, very harmonious and very easy, because we worked out first I would do this, and Deborah Bull, who's actually now in the House of Lords, having been a classical ballet dancer with the Royal Ballet, is now in the House of Lords, in operating in a very senior position. Then she had just stopped being a dancer, and I wrote about the ballets, and she wrote about her experience of dancing them. So she did her stuff, and I did mine, and then our editor put it together, and that was all very fine and easy.
It's nice to hear about projects just being well run, I think.
Yeah.
I like that. So
Hmm.
speaking of projects, if you can talk, you mentioned that obviously the next Villanelle book is coming out in the spring. Is there anything that you can? Is that sort of under wraps, or is there anything you can say about it to sort of whet people's appetite for it?
It's called Killing Eve Medusa, and it is set in the Aegean. And but I think I can. That's not giving away too much.
Yeah, yeah. We definitely don't want to spoil the surprise. But
What if we were to ask you the question again under duress? What would you say?
I'll take you out to a small hut in a Siberian forest and ask you again.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh,
We can't do that, Ben. He'd know the way around better than us.
oh yeah, we'd
He'd
get
get the upper
absolutely
hand.
end up
It'd be
castrated
done.
and walking around with our balls in our pocket. It'd be horrible. Oh, amazing! That's really stuck with me. That was the comeuppance for that character. That sort of incidental moment as a reader was this life-changing, altering, huge, sweeping thing for so many of those secondary characters in that extract. Really impressive stuff. So I just as you can tell, because I keep talking about it, it's been wonderful having you on and hearing the storytelling and hearing the writing and your take on it and your take on constructing. I feel like you've really left an impact on me about how to construct place and how important it is to do that and convey that briefly and well. So thank you for that.
It's been a real pleasure. Really fun.
Wonderful. Oh, well, yeah. Thank you for your time. Unless you have any questions for me, I think my final question for you is: where's the best place for people to keep up to date with your news? Should they go to your website or a particular social media?
They could go to my website. I've got a Substack called Killing Eve, and also my Instagram is Luke Jennings Author, all one word.
Top notch.
All
Well,
my
Easy
news
to
is
remember.
there.
We love it.
yeah. Well, thank you again, Luke, and thank you for your time. And this has been a really wonderful experience, so I've really appreciated it. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben, and thanks, Nico. I've really enjoyed it.
It's been wonderful chatting with you, my friend.
Thank you. It's been real. Yeah.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of The Tiny Bookcase.
Remember to subscribe, otherwise you're going to miss out on the future fun.
Also, tell a friend. If you like this episode, link them to it.
We'd be tremendously grateful. You can follow us on Twitter at BookcaseTiny, Facebook at The Tiny Bookcase, and Instagram at BookcaseTiny for updates. Speaking of supporting the podcast, well, magic can only take one so far. The Tiny Bookcase is supported by the generosity of its patrons. Those kind souls have really kept my belly full the last year. Let's cast a spell for them, shall we? For rich ginger tones on their scalp, let us cast the Orangi Hedondo spell for Scott Byrne. And for general fabulousness, why not the Ooh La La, How's Your Mother spell on Matthew McLaren?
How do you come up with that shit, man?